Perfect Blue is a 1997 film directed by Satoshi Kon. It's a loose adaptation of a 1992 novel of the same name, written by Yokikazu Takeuchi. It is Kon's first full anime film, although he'd worked on part of an anthology before, as well as live action. It's a psychological horror film focusing on Mima, a former pop idol who decides to become a serious actor, but experiences increasingly distressing breaks from reality. It offers commentary on the nature of fandom, social expectations, and what art is. It's slow-paced, but with good build-up of tension and a very satisfying payoff. Before we get into the film proper, however, I want to address a controversy with the film in relation to Darren Aronofsky. He was a huge fan of Perfect Blue, and there are claims on the internet that he purchased the rights for it. These are incorrect, however, as established in a 2001 blog post by Cohn himself. He talked with Aronofsky a year after Requiem was released, and while apparently he had been interested in the rights, the deal fell through for one reason or another. The most decided reason being that he insisted that he would direct, whereas the production company wanted someone else. Regardless, the rights were never sold, but despite this he featured a shot-for-shot remake of a scene in Perfect Blue in Requiem. Of course, without the concept of homage, half the filmmakers in Hollywood would be out of a job. But in this case it utilizes the exact same camera angles, ideas, and even general concepts. It's more than just an idea, it's the same thing, in live-action form. Although it's a translation from Japanese, he'd said something like, "It's pathetic because the person being paid homage to has less name recognition, less social credibility, and less budget to spend. To summarize, it's fine to pay homage to the greats. It's acknowledging the work that came before and the influences." Perfect Blue, however, was an obscure film at the time, a box office failure, and almost completely unknown outside of Japan. By recreating the scene in that way, it crosses the line. Aronofsky received accolades and awards for Requiem for how it was shot, and when the shot choices were stolen, well, it feels dishonest. This is not the most egregious case, however, as Aronofsky's Black Swan goes a step further. To illuminate, here's a summary of both films. A young artistic woman decides to work in a darker role than she has before. Images of a doppelganger torment her as she dives into her work and loses her grip on reality. Black Swan, while in a different setting, has many similarities to Perfect Blue. Not only are the plots and characters similar, but the theme of mirrors and reflective surfaces revealing an inner darkness occur in both. Despite this, in a Q&A session when asked about it, Aronofsky said this: "Not really. There are similarities between the films, but it wasn't influenced by it." This is, of course, an absolute lie. Perfect Blue was one of his favorite films, and there are a number of shots in Black Swan that mirror the earlier film. While it's not black and white whether it's a legal matter, to say it wasn't influenced is absurd. Cohn unfortunately died a few months before Black Swan released, so he never had a chance to offer an opinion on it. Although if his snarkiness in his blog post is any indication, he would probably have some choice words. Again roughly translated, but he calls the scene in Requiem too much of a plagiarism. No, it's too much of an homage. However, we're not here to demonize Aronofsky, but to celebrate Cohn's work. Perfect Blue is animated by Madhouse, a studio that has been responsible for a number of notable works, including One Punch Man and Hunter x Hunter. While the animation is not particularly crisp, and early on the background elements are fairly static, it's clear they spent their money on the parts that mattered most, and the quality improves significantly in the final act and some of the later chase scenes. There are a number of interesting visual motifs that occur throughout the film. The first is the use of color. The majority of the film is muted, with a relatively light palette. The exception is red, which is used for emphasis in a number of different ways. In Mima's first scene where she is transitioning from being a pop idol, she is wearing an outfit that is half red, but still appears childish. A yellow shirt with red overalls. This is another of the primary themes of the film, transitioning from youth to adulthood. In this case, from being a pop idol to being an actor. Of course, not every red item has a specific meaning, but is often used to highlight a scene, even just the items in an apartment or railing separating the crowd from the stage. In Japanese culture, the color red can have a number of different meanings, but the most relevant are self-sacrifice, passion, and of course, blood. Throughout the film, Mima is dogged by a stalker, someone who has created a website called Mima's Apartment, which celebrates her pop idol career, as well as featuring a personal diary created by Me-Mania, the stalker. His character serves as commentary on fan culture, as well as the obsessive otaku, a common Japanese trope. Me-Mania murders a number of people who are involved with Mima's transformation, including a screenwriter for her show and a photographer who she did a risque photo shoot with. Each of these is depicted fully, and the film doesn't shy away from the violence. While violent anime was certainly not unheard of, the levels in Perfect Blue were an outlier, especially in the late 90s. This is especially true in two extremely graphic and realistic sexual assault scenes, which are honestly quite difficult to get through. While the first event is simulated, it still sends one of the characters running out crying, and we feel her pain. Coming back to the idea of a simulation, there's a significant meta element that was not present in the original novel. In this case, it is the show within a show that Mima is acting on. At first her role is small, but it expands as she shows prowess in acting. Her character in the show begins to experience delusions, and a second personality forms, committing heinous acts. Mima begins to experience this in real life as well, as her doppelganger, personified by herself in her pop idol dress, torments her about her choices, and seems to be causing real-life murders. While it's revealed this is Me-mania, there are moments where Mima believes that she is personally responsible, especially when dreams bleed into reality. The alternative Mima represents the life she could have had, one that was innocent and without violence or consequences. The innocence of youth personified, but it ignores the reality of the situation, as children often do. While she was a pop star, her band was unsuccessful. She wasn't making much money. Mima tries to preempt this by quitting and focusing on acting immediately. This works, and she goes from a single line to one of the main villains, but all the time she has fears and doubts about what she's doing. Just like everyone does as they age, she fears losing a part of herself. There's the additional aspect of sexual maturity. As a pop idol, she was sexualized but unobtainable, a porcelain doll. When she joined the adult-oriented show, she had to act out a rape scene, and later posed for Nudie magazine. In many ways, this is embracing her own sexuality and being empowered by it, but it's frightening, as shown in a few key scenes, including the bathtub scene mentioned earlier. However, despite her decision being right for her, as shown at the end of the film, there are elements of society that resist the chance. Me-mania literally gathers up all the magazines he can in a false belief that he's protecting Mima's innocence or purity. The idea of the virgin woman being more pure or good than the one who embraces her sexuality is a misogynistic concept that has roots going back thousands of years, and unfortunately still continues to this day. It's not only Me-mania who holds this view, however, as the final twist of the film is that Mima's manager, Rumi, has the same ideals and believes herself to be the true Mima, who is still a pop idol, and she has been emailing Me-mania and encouraging him to commit the murders throughout the film. This all leads to the final scene, where Mima flees from Rumi, who is personified as Mima in a red dress. This is by far the best moment of the film, intercutting with reflections between the actual reality and the experiences of the two characters. This is perfectly encapsulated by a single scene that lasts only a few seconds, which shows Rumi reflected in the building. Also of note in the scene is the use of red, where there are some beautiful little touches, like how Mima grows more pale from blood loss as the scene progresses, and the jagged mirror reflecting Rumi's fractured psyche. While some might find the twist a bit hackneyed or predictable, it works perfectly for the film. There's definite build-up to it, and it feels like a rewarding conclusion to clues, rather than something thrown in for drama or an action-packed finale. Many horror films falter in their final act, but Perfect Blue is not one of them. Overall, the film is amazing, with excellent tension, interesting visuals, and a good storyline that would go on to influence many others. All of Cohn's work bears watching, and while Perfect Blue may have been his first, it is his best, at least in my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and please like, subscribe, and be well.